Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Sippin' on Stories podcast. I am Andy Corey. I am your host, and I'm so delighted that you are here today. I have some wonderful news for you Dr. Pepper lovers. I was listening to the radio this morning, which I do not do very often, but all of a sudden I was like, wait, what is this lady talking about? And come to find out, the Dr. Pepper Coconut Creamy edition is back. I don't know how long. I don't know even when it came back to the stores, but you better believe I instantly went onto my Walmart grocery delivery, which, side note, if you do not do Walmart grocery delivery, it is a lifesaver. I am a mom of 4 young kids. I technically do have time. I could go to the store, but I don't have to. And it's so nice. Anyway, I added multiple of those to my cart. So, Britt, my husband, if you're listening, I am sorry for how many of those we're going to be getting. And I'm just crossing my fingers that in the morning, when my delivery does come, that they actually do come and they aren't out of stock. I love it. It is my favorite. So, if you also tried that and loved it, run to the stores and grab some. All right, so for today's episode, it is a heavy one. I'm not going to lie. Trigger warning, it does talk mainly about suicide. Suicide is something that I feel like is not talked about, honestly, enough. And personally, in my own life, I mentioned this in this episode, I know a lot of people really close and dear to my heart that have lost somebody in their life to suicide. So Carey approached me and said that she felt strongly that she wanted to talk about this for this month. In case you didn't know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So she thought it would be good to come on and share this story with us all. And yeah, it was emotional. I will say that is one of the things that I have really loved about doing this podcast is I feel like I have had a lot of experiences of people willing to share some of their hardest and most vulnerable moments with me, and tears are shed, and I just feel so much gratitude that people feel safe enough to have those conversations with me. And I really, really love that. So thank you for being open and willing to do that. I have been friends with Carey for a while, but I personally had not heard this story before. So it was definitely emotional for me, but also I feel like was important to share. So here is Carey for today's episode of the Sippin' on Stories podcast. Okay, do you want this to be an anonymous story, or do you want to use your name? I'm fine with either.
I think it's okay to use my name.
Okay. All right. So Carey, we have my friend Carey here today. As I ask everybody, Carey, what is your favorite drink? I see you have one with you.
I do. I just love a plain old Coke, and however, it does preferably need to be from Pick Me Up for some reason. Like, their mix is just better. I used to love the flavored drinks, but they got to be too sweet for me. I couldn't handle them. I had some medicine changes, and yeah, sadly, because I loved my coconut cream and the pineapple puree, and I loved that, but I can't do it anymore.
Yeah. So you said just Diet Coke?
Just regular Coke.
Oh, regular Coke.
I can't do diet. Diet makes me gag.
I can't ever tell the difference in it. Well, I can. It just tastes better when it's not diet. But
I've drank diet in the past off and on, but again, with the medicine, I think it's what it is. But yeah, not that I know what poison tastes like, but I really feel like when I take a drink of diet, I'm being poisoned.
Mm-hmm.
So
That makes sense. All right, Carey. So you wanted to talk about your story today. Will you give a little bit behind of why this is important to you and why you want to share it right now?
So, it's a kind of a sensitive topic, and it's not something that I go around talking about. So a lot of people don't know that this is part of my life. But May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so I just thought it would be a good thing to just let people know that suicide is a very big problem, and it's something that can happen to anyone. Some of the people I've lost are not people that you would think would suffer from anything that would lead to that. So it actually started when I was pretty young. When I was 18, I worked at Walmart. I was dating a guy for about 6 months or so. And he had told me, he was a little bit older than me. He had told me to get the weekend off, and we were going to go to Boise, and I was going to meet his parents. I think his dad was in the hospital, and he needed to go see him. It was also the weekend of my birthday. So I was like, okay. So I got the weekend off, and he was a little bit cagey maybe about details.
Like what you were going to be doing?
Yeah, like when we were leaving and, you know,
see.
stuff like that. Like, so he had started working sometime when we were dating. He had switched from working during the day, that's how I met him, to working the overnight shift. And so he I cannot, I mean, it was a long time ago. I'm not 18 years ago. Yeah, I can't even math. But anyway, I didn't end up talking to him right before it was time for him to go to work. And so I had called in the middle of the night when I knew it was probably like break time or whatever. And they told me he didn't go to work. And I was like, well, that's weird. But, you know, I guess maybe he's just sleeping so we can leave.
Mm-hmm.
And still didn't hear from him the next morning. So I think I just decided I'd go to Walmart, and I don't know if I thought he was like hiding in the back or what, but you know, like he wasn't at his house and he wasn't, you know, so, and there wasn't cell phones back then.
Yeah.
So when I walked in the door greeter asked me, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "I'm looking for Eric." And she just told me, "He's dead. He committed suicide last night." And I was shocked.
Like, did you believe her when she said that?
Probably not. I remember calling a friend, and she came and got me, and I think we went in the back and talked to like management, and I'm sure it was all very surreal for a long time. I remember, just to like put my mind at ease, because I was just this random, well, not random, but I was the girlfriend.
How long had you been dating him?
About 6 months. So
Okay.
we had started dating in August, and it was February. And I knew he had been divorced or was going through a divorce. He didn't talk a ton about it, but like he lived in their old apartment. So when I first started dating him, there was a few things that were still hers that then she came and got. And I was like, "Well, where did your TV go?" And he's like, "Oh, it was my ex-wife's and she took it," you know. Mm-hmm. He always referred to her as ex-wife. So it turns out that was like when their divorce became final. And that was his like reaction, I think. But I had no idea. And being so young, it was, like I said, it was my birthday weekend, so I turned 19. It was traumatic, but it was like a really bad breakup, but not like he was dead.
There's like no closure to that.
Yeah, it was like...
And you can't get it.
Yeah, and, it turned out he was just really struggling with the divorce, and he didn't have any money, probably just because he worked at Walmart and got divorced. And so he had, like, also, like, taken it was my birthday's the 28th, so it was, like, the end of the month, and so he, like, collected his roommate's money to, like, pay the rent, but not paid the rent, so then they were, like, freaking out, and then it turned out a few weeks later, another girlfriend showed up. So
he was dating somebody else?
Yeah.
Oh.
So I wasn't the only girlfriend.
Okay. That was a surprise.
Yeah. So it kind of accelerated the, like, okay, maybe I'm not as heartbroken. Like, he wasn't exactly who I thought he was. But it was still traumatic.
Of course. You probably you hadn't experienced anything like that up till that point.
No. And so, throughout life, I had a relative whose husband committed suicide out in, like, our family, like, on my grandma's property barn. And it was more of a, like, I think spur of the moment, like, he had a really bad day. They got in a fight and he just, like, went out there. And, but that was also, like, traumatic because they had 3 little kids, and, like, just seeing the effects, and you think, who would do that, or how, and you feel so bad for those left behind because you can't ask any questions or you can't get any closure. So, and my husband had a coworker. He was someone we'd been out to dinner with, him and his wife. They really nice guy. And him and his wife were having marital problems. He had retired. He didn't really know. In law enforcement, a lot of people can retire at 50, at least in California. He was struggling with being retired and not knowing what to do, and I think just being home all the time, like, they fought more. And he also committed suicide again, and it was one of the reasons we had become close was they had twins, and I was pregnant with twins at the time. When we started hanging out a lot more, I was pregnant with our twins, and, kind of scared, like, how are we going to do this? And so they kind of had walked us through a lot of things. And so I remember going to that funeral and watching these, I don't remember exactly how old they were, but probably like 16, 17, twins walk down, the aisle, and thinking, their whole future is just
so different now.
Yeah. And the wife was so broken, and you think, well, what was it for? Like, it just leaves you gutted. And he was a real quiet kind of guy until you knew him. I think he probably held a lot of things in, just as, like, my boyfriend had never talked about all his problems. And then I remember, it wasn't someone I knew close, but one of my dad's friends, probably about 3 or 4 years before my dad started having problems with his mental health. He had, I don't remember now if it was Alzheimer's or it was a fatal diagnosis where you just were going to, like, become decrepit. And he went in, I think, his office and shot himself. And I remember my dad just being so upset and saying, I don't see how anyone could do that. He also was the one who kind of cleaned up the scene.
Your dad was?
Yeah, my dad was the one who kind of cleaned up the scene when my cousin's husband had gone in the barn. So, and just, he I guess my point is he was like always so upset when it happened. Like he couldn't understand how anyone could do that. And, you know,
kind of what a lot of us think when we see that happen is, what about all the people you're leaving behind? What do you, the confusion.
So, my dad, he was a really hard worker.
What did he do?
He was a rancher.
Okay.
Slash farmer slash mechanic slash jack of all trades, basically.
Which is like you. You're also a jack of all trades.
A little bit. Totally different trades. But,
yes, they are.
He had a couple episodes of, I guess, like severe depression.
How old are you at this point when he starts feeling depressed?
This was about 12 or 13 years ago. So, 37, 38. When I was a teenager, he had a bad episode where like a bunch of his cows died, and he took it really hard and just kind of worked himself to like the edge of like a nervous breakdown, and kind of had to like take a step back and be, you know, like, but he got better. Mm-hmm. He, you know, came out of it, and I think I was a senior that year. I don't really remember a lot about it. No one really talked about it. I knew it was happening, but like, it wasn't a big blip on my radar. It wasn't something that I like freaked out about. And then as far as I know, he didn't really have any episodes. He started having problems. Yeah, about 2012-ish. His mom had passed away, and it made him in charge of her estate, and that started a big divide with family members who didn't agree with it. And but he, again, like, I was deeply involved in that instance, but again, he came out of it and like seemed okay, seemed like himself again, and we had a good couple years. And then, so it was really around probably the beginning of April of 2015. He just said, "Oh no, it's coming back." And he knew what to look for. He knew, you know, whatever.
He had told all of you guys that?
Yeah. Well, you know, he told my mom, and, you know, like, just he started kind of retreating a little bit. Like, he didn't want to like watch my kids for the weekend. Like, oh, that might be too much stress. Mm-hmm. But it was a really rapid, like, it started, and then he just got really bad really fast. He wasn't able to sleep. It was about 3 weeks straight that he had like no sleep, almost.
That's not good for anybody.
No. And he was obviously going through more than just anxiety. He all of a sudden would get very confused, and it was almost like a rapid onset dementia. Mm-hmm. There was a day that like I'd gone to their house, and he was standing outside with his coat, and I asked him, "Is someone coming to get you?" Mm-hmm. And he looked at his coat like he didn't know why he had it or what he was doing.
Just standing outside?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there was some instances, and he didn't at all act like the person I knew or any of us knew. And so I had gotten him, you know, an appointment with a neurologist. My mom was trying really hard to get him. He did start going to a counselor. He got back on his meds. Just they didn't seem like they were working. Nothing seemed to work. And because he's a farmer / rancher, whatever, my mom had just been laid off from her job. They didn't have any insurance. And so he just refused to go in. And he was very adamant about, they'll just stick me in the mental hospital and I won't go there. And so it came down to, do we make him go against his will? And what will happen? Will it turn into, because I think, going back to my husband's coworker, that's kind of what was happening, is he was running from like whoever was trying to get him help.
Like it was backfiring. And
he had left, like they had a bad fight and he had left, and she had called because she knew that's probably what he was going to do. And so the police, his friends, were trying to, they had found him and they were in the parking lot and he did it in front of them. So,
oh my gosh.
Again, it was like he didn't want the help, or he didn't, whatever. It's hard to know the state of mind.
Of course.
But my dad, apologize if it's confusing, bouncing around.
Oh, I'm not confused.
My dad, he did not want to be helped, or in that way. He wanted help, but
the thought of going to a mental institution was a little bit scary.
So we all just kind of took turns being with him, so he wasn't alone.
Like, would you stay at their house, or?
I never spent the night, but my sister didn't have children at the time. Her and her husband, they were still newlyweds-ish. So they would go stay there. My mom wasn't working at the time, and I would go down and be there different times, just like so she could go to the store or whatever. But it had gotten to the point where you could tell he was not real safe. My husband and I had gone and taken all the guns out of their house, and I don't remember if I think we might have taken knives. I don't know. But
had he at this point said that it was something that he was thinking about doing, or what made you know that you needed to start doing those things?
In the past, so when he's had his episode a couple years before that, he would talk about how suicidal he felt, and it scared him, and he didn't want to feel that way. He was very open. This time he wasn't as open. He would talk about it mostly just to my mom. But like I said, he was doing things that were not at all anything he would do. And so I remember having a conversation with my husband, and he's like, you have to get him help. You have to get him admitted. You have to call the police. But how do you be the one that does that? He had promised us all he wouldn't do anything. And, we thought we had removed all the dangers. We thought he would be okay. And if we just, my brothers would take him and, go to work and they'd do stuff. So it came down to, like I said, that had started in April. And it was Mother's Day weekend, which is in May.
So that was really fast.
Yeah, it was very fast. My mom was going to go. At the time, my grandma was living in assisted living, and they were having like a Mother's Day tea. And so my mom was going to go to that, and I was going to come down and bring my kids and spend the day with my dad. And so I called that morning. My church was having a Mother's Day breakfast type thing, and so when that got done around 10:30 probably, I called my mom, okay, I can head down. And she said, I'm pretty sure he went with your brother. I heard the car door and I can't find him, and so I think he just went with your brother. And I thought, okay, I guess I can just hang out with my kids. And so we had made plans to go to the movie. It was a Saturday, and we made lunch, and then I remember my husband's phone ringing and him saying, no, he's not here. And I was like, what? You know, and so he left, and he said, I'm going to go help them search they just can't find your dad.
Your husband?
Yeah.
I don't know if you want me to use his name, so.
It's probably fine. I don't know. Anyway, so I knew immediately, like, this was a big problem. It was something that I had worried about, like, was he going to sneak off and jump off a cliff? Like, they live in the country. I mean, he would have to hike quite a ways. Or who knows? You know, I had worried about, you know, but you don't think that something like that really would happen, I guess. But what had happened was he had a gun hidden in his truck that no one knew was there. And so he had gone in his shop and shot himself, and he had the door locked, and, you know, it didn't have windows, or at least they couldn't see him in there. I think he was in a spot. Anyway, they finally got the door open and found him.
Who, when you said they, was your brother? And
it was
Ken, or
my brothers.
Okay.
Ken, my husband, hadn't made it there yet.
Okay.
I think someone called him, and so he had turned around, and I remember him walking in the door, and it was just like, okay, that wasn't long enough for you to get there. I think I had the presence of mind to know, like, whatever it was going on. So I had asked my neighbor to come get my kids, and so my kids weren't home. And I'd called a friend, and she'd come over, and I just remember him walking in and saying they found him. And I remember, and he said where and what had happened, and I just remember hitting the floor, and it was honestly the worst day of my life. I think worse than the day I found out I had cancer. I'd had miscarriage. Like, it was the worst pain, and it will be 10 years this Mother's Day weekend, so the Friday before. My dad never would have ruined Mother's Day like that. He was completely gone, like, who he actually was. Like, I don't think he could think. I don't think it was a decision he made. He had talked about voices in his head, or, you know, I think just Satan, like the darkness of depression is a very easy way for him to get to you. Because if you make a choice like that, it's like a small little win for him, even though not really, because I believe you can be redeemed. And I know my dad has made choices on the other side and is doing well. All I know, the things I know should lead me to not be so sad and miss him, but they don't.
Of course.
It is a huge gaping hole. My twins are going to graduate this year, and it is so bittersweet. The twins were 7, and Caitlin was 4. The twins remember him. Caitlin, I don't think really does.
probably remembers the stories of him maybe a little more.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to talk with all of them. Only as far as I know, one of my twins knows what really happened because she figured it out and asked. Like I said, this is not something I just go around talking about. But I decided it's enough of a problem that it's time to stop being secretive. And I'm actually been going to school the last, I don't even know, like 4 years, getting my degree in marriage and family relations. So I can try to somehow tackle this problem. I don't really know how or what I'm going to do, or even if I'm strong enough to actually work in that field of suicide prevention. But I know it needs attention. So since that day, I've found out that men, online it says 65 and up, but my dad was 61, are the highest risk group. I never would have ever thought that.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
And males are a lot more prone to it than females. Now, in my stories, they were all men, but I did know of females doing it, and it's all the things I've learned are no one can predict anything, but as a person, if you see someone rapidly change, like their personality, they're not eating, they're not sleeping, ask them if they need help. The vast majority won't let you, but there could be that one who will, who might talk to you, who might let you take them to the doctor, who maybe just needs that person to reach out. I personally have experienced this darkness when I was a teenager. I remember, thinking that my life wasn't going anywhere. I was a certain age and I wasn't popular and I didn't have a boyfriend, and, what was the point? And of course, nothing really came of it other than I think I was just like very dramatic and like started writing a letter, and then like, okay, never mind. Like,
that was as far as that got.
Yeah, It wasn't any big like, oh my gosh. But I did, when my twins were born, have postpartum. It wasn't the suicidal like that bad, and luckily I had a doctor that was like right on top of it. But I could see how, and I do know it happens, where women succumb to suicide from postpartum being so severe. And actually, about probably, I'm pretty sure it was July. Seems like the months after my dad left us, it's just kind of a fog. But I remember going one night to a pizza place here in town for a surprise party. And we had my dad's 60th birthday there, and it triggered a panic attack. And it got really bad, and I couldn't calm down. And I remember a voice kind of thought saying, if you want to see your dad again, it's really easy. You just have to do this. And I remember thinking, okay, like, I want to see him that bad. Of course, like, I woke up, or, I snapped out of, I don't know if that's the right term, but,
train of
I
thought.
like came back to like, yeah, I want to be with my dad, but I want to watch my kids
girls.
grow up and my husband. And so, and I just want to say to all those other, I really hate the word victims, but those who are left behind, the survivors, that the person that left you didn't make a choice to leave you. They made a choice to end their pain. But I think we as people just need to do more to help others.
Yeah. What would you say, like, through the healing afterwards, were there people that were supportive of you through the healing? Or what would you say to the people that know somebody who's like one of the hurt? How do you help them?
Just be there. I mean, obviously, right at the beginning, you get a lot of like flowers and dinners, and you know, it's the 3 months later when you're in a fog and
it's still hurting.
Yeah, I probably needed more, like, just showing up and checking on me, and it's easy to just not talk about it, to just go along and not get over it, because they'll never get over it, but just kind of put on the appearance that everything is okay. And I think that's the problem. It needs to be talked about. I admire all the people who put it in the obituary, who say there was a struggle, you know. Just this last week, I read one of a teenage boy, and he's a senior, just like my girls are seniors, and my heart just shatters for his family. But it said in there that, you know, the darkness did not win. He might have, you know, lost this round, but he, you know, is a fighter. And I also listened to a person who has a podcast and talked about, it's actually Kobe Ryan. And as we talked about just before we started, I'm a little obsessed with watching the Lori Daybell thing. Vallow. I don't even really, anyway, that person. And he talked about, he is so glad he didn't give in to his, because, I mean, how can you imagine losing your two siblings and your mom was the person who did it? I mean, that would just shatter your whole existence.
Yeah.
And I know from being a cancer survivor, survivor guilt is a real thing. Like, you just think, why am I okay and they're not? Like, you're happy that you're okay,
obviously,
but yeah. And so the things he had to be feeling, but he just said, you know, he was real close to committing suicide, and he talked about how grateful he is that he didn't, and, you know, how his life has got better. Obviously, you know, there's still trials going on and he's still struggling. But I admire him for saying, I admire him for talking. And so that's why I told you I would share this story. It's not very uplifting. It's sad, and I hope it doesn't happen again to anyone I know. But unfortunately, it seems to be just becoming, the rates keep shooting up higher and higher.
Well, Carey, I think that you're very strong. You're a very strong person. I really appreciate you coming on. There's a lot of people, just as I've been reflecting, like coming over here, like all the people in my life, I have very close people to me that have family members that I've, in my own life, that I've lost to suicide, and other close people to me that I've lost a loved one. And you're right. Like, I feel like it's not talked about, or it can be ignored a lot of the time. And that makes me reflect on me too, of like, what can I be doing to still be helping them, or be active in the people in my life to make sure that I'm just aware of their needs and how they're feeling and actually checking in on my loved ones, those things. So I know that there's going to be people that listen to this that unfortunately have experienced the same trauma that you have. And I appreciate you coming on and talking about that.
And because of this experience and I guess others, I always try to leave things with people knowing how I feel. Like, I'm so grateful that the last time I saw my dad, I gave him a hug and told him I loved him. I didn't know it was the last time. You never know. No, but I do try to look at life more as like, I don't want regrets. So I guess my last little 2 cents.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is great. I mean, I think that in my head a lot of times I'm like, well, if this is the last time, and sometimes it really could be, and you just don't actually know. So, yeah. Gosh, my microphone is just like a pendulum. What time is it? Okay. Thank you, Carey. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And I know you have your soda, but I am going to bring you another one for coming on and sharing that. So, okay. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Carey really is so strong. She has been through so many trials in her life, and this obviously is a very big trial that she has gone through. I know when she was talking to me about it, my eyes were just filling with tears, and I was just trying to hold them in so that you guys didn't hear me through the microphone and could actually hear her talk. I am so grateful again that she came on and was vulnerable with me and shared that with me and with all of you. So thank you for listening to that. If you yourself are struggling with suicidal thoughts, please know that you are not alone and there is help. You can call or text the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988 anytime, day or night. And if you've lost somebody to suicide, there are support groups and resources for you as well. I'm grateful that today this podcast could be a place for raw, hard, honest conversation, healing, connection, and I'm grateful you're here. Please take care of yourself and check in on the people that you love and care about. That is all I'm going to say for today's episode. So I will see you here again next week for another episode of the Sippin' on Stories podcast.